The plane hadn't even left the gate, but the meltdown was already starting. Row 2, Seat B. A sweet-faced boy with almond-shaped eyes was hitting his chest with both fists, tears pouring down his cheeks like a dam had burst inside him. 8 years old, rocking so hard the entire row was shaking. "Tommy, please, buddy, use your words." His father's voice was strained, desperate. Designer suit wrinkled from stress, million-dollar confidence completely shattered. But Tommy couldn't use his words. Not when the world felt this loud, this bright, this overwhelming. His comfort blanket wasn't working. The breathing exercises weren't working. Nothing was working. That's when the complaints started. "Seriously? We're stuck with this for 6 hours? Someone needs to do something about that kid." This is exactly why they shouldn't fly. The father, clearly wealthy, clearly powerful, clearly helpless, just stood there taking every harsh word. "I'm sorry," he kept whispering to strangers who didn't care about his apology. Then, from the back of the plane, past all the judgment and whispers, a small voice cut through the chaos. "Excuse me, sir." Heads turned. A black boy in clothes that had seen better days stood in the aisle. No shoes that fit right, no fancy anything. But his eyes held something the adults had lost. "I think I can help your son." The businessman next to him scoffed. "Kid, get back to your seat before you make things worse." But the boy didn't move, just looked directly at the crying child and said 5 words that changed everything. "Tommy, I see you, buddy." And for the first time since boarding, Tommy looked up. What happened next would make a millionaire father realize he'd been missing the most important thing about his own son. But before we continue, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if stories like this move you, hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss what happens when humanity shows up in unexpected ways. It was Flight 412, Miami International to Seattle, American Airlines, completely full. No cancellations, no empty seats, no mercy. Premium cabin, complimentary drinks flowing, row after row of Gucci carry-ons and MacBook Pros. Polished success, the kind that commands respect without asking. In seat 2B sat Jonathan Wellington, the genius behind CloudVault, a $3.4 billion data security empire. Italian leather shoes, Swiss timepiece, Black American Express Centurion. The kind of man who gets escorted to VIP lounges without showing ID. Beside him sat Tommy, pale, sweet-faced, legs swinging restlessly. 8 years old, bright smile that could light up rooms. But words came differently for him. Understanding took longer. And planes made everything feel too big, too fast, too scary. Across the aisle, passengers whispered, "What's wrong with that kid? He looks different. Why can't he just sit still like normal children?" "Great, we're stuck with a special needs meltdown for 6 hours." Jonathan heard every word. He always did. He just straightened his tie and typed furiously on his phone. Noise-cancelling headphones. Priority shipping. But in the back, row 28C told a different story entirely. Malik Thompson, 9 years old, wearing his older cousin's outgrown clothes, sitting next to his aunt, who clutched a worn purse and a sandwich wrapped in paper towels. "Tell me again why we're flying, Auntie," Malik asked quietly. His aunt smiled, adjusting her second-hand coat. "Seattle, baby. Your mama's getting better at that special hospital. We're bringing her home." The flight attendant walked past their section without a glance. No premium service here, no warm towels, just stale crackers and the steady hum of engines that had seen better decades. "Why is that boy up front crying?" Malik asked, looking toward business class. His aunt followed his gaze. "Sometimes people hurt in ways we can't see, Malik. That little boy, he's probably scared." Malik had noticed Tommy during boarding, the sweet kid with the round face and gentle eyes, who seemed overwhelmed by all the noise and movement. Even now, 20 rows back, Malik could see him becoming more agitated. He's not talking, just making sounds like he's trying to hold the whole world together. "You feel it, don't you, baby?" his aunt asked, looking up from her magazine. Malik nodded slowly. "Yeah, and it's getting stronger." Meanwhile, up front, they hadn't even taken off yet, but the tension was already suffocating. Flight attendants exchanged worried looks. Jonathan reached into his jacket, pulled out a small bottle of children's medication, stared at it, then put it back. "No meds today," he whispered to himself. "The doctors said we should try without them." That's when Tommy kicked his legs harder, bumping the seat ahead. A man in first class turned around, scowling. "Sir, control your child." "He's not an animal," Jonathan cut him off, voice steady but dangerous. Behind them, another voice chimed in. "Well, you sure don't act like his parent." Jonathan turned slowly. A woman in business class smirked and sipped her wine. The pressure was building degree by degree, but from the back of the plane, Malik was already unbuckling his seatbelt. "Auntie, I need to help him." "I know, baby," she said softly. "Just be gentle with them." He stood up, small but determined. And as he walked forward, past strangers in expensive clothes, past judgment wrapped in designer luggage, every row fell silent. Because whether they realized it or not, their worlds were about to collide in ways that would change everything. "Sir, would you prefer red or white wine?" Jonathan didn't even blink. "Whatever's French, no ice." That's how people approached him, not out of kindness, but because making Jonathan Wellington wait was career suicide. Fortune 500 CEOs knew his reputation. Tech billionaires competed for his attention. He was the man who could say no so politely that companies thanked him for the privilege. But right now, all that power meant nothing. His son sat rigid beside him, shoes kicked off, head tilted back, mouth open in silent distress. You could see the storm building behind his eyes. Tommy Wellington, 8 years old, diagnosed with Down syndrome at birth. High-functioning, loving, brilliant in his own way, but overwhelmed easily. And airplanes were sensory nightmares. A woman across the aisle leaned over with fake concern. "Your son, is he all right?" Jonathan forced a professional smile. "He's just overstimulated by the environment." She nodded with practiced sympathy. "Have you considered special schools? I hear they work wonders." Jonathan counted to 3. "Thanks, never occurred to me." Tommy began rocking faster, hands covering his ears. Meanwhile, in row 28C, Malik Thompson sat quietly, but his eyes missed nothing. He watched how people moved around Tommy, how they whispered when they thought no one was listening, how they looked everywhere except directly at him. A flight attendant stopped Malik at the business class divider. "Excuse me, sweetie, this section is for premium passengers only." Malik looked up calmly. "I'm not trying to sit anywhere, I'm trying to help someone." The attendant's smile was patronizing. "I'm sure you are, but you need to return to your seat. That's 28C, correct?" Malik nodded. "I know where I belong." "Do you?" She blinked, confused. He walked past her before she could respond. A businessman in row 5 muttered, "They really let anyone on planes these days." Malik kept walking. He passed Jonathan and Tommy, didn't stare or point, just observed with gentle understanding. Later, when reporters asked what made him approach that family when no one else would, he'd answer simply, "He reminded me of my little cousin back home. Same scared eyes." That would be the first time anyone learned about Malik's family, about the cousin with special needs who taught him that different didn't mean broken. Up front, Jonathan removed his cufflinks and set them in the tray. His palms were sweating. "Hey, Tommy," he whispered. "Want to count with Daddy like we practiced?" Tommy didn't respond, but his legs started bouncing rapidly. Jonathan glanced at the seatbelt sign, still illuminated. Nowhere to escape for the next 5 hours. He exhaled loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. "You can negotiate billion-dollar deals," he muttered to himself, "but you can't calm your own child." Malik made it to the front section, past flight attendants, past stairs, past someone whispering, "Where's his guardian?" He didn't ask permission, didn't look around for approval. He knelt slowly beside Tommy's seat, careful not to startle him. Jonathan nearly jumped up. "Hey, what are you doing?" Malik didn't look away from Tommy. "You're crowding him." Jonathan froze. "Excuse me." "You're crowding him. His brain needs space to breathe, and your worry is making it harder." Jonathan stepped back like he'd been struck. The flight attendant hurried over. "Young man, you can't be here without permission." But Tommy's rocking slowed. His breathing steadied. Malik reached out slowly, not touching, just placing his hand near Tommy's arm. Then he spoke, barely above a whisper. "It's okay, buddy. You're safe now." He didn't demand respect. He came for something more important. But what Malik did next made even the millionaire question everything he thought he knew about loving his own son. "Where are this child's parents? Are we seriously letting unaccompanied minors run the aircraft now? This has to be some kind of social experiment." The whispers started small, but small doesn't mean powerless. Malik heard every single comment. He just kept his hand steady near Tommy's arm, silent, patient. But the judgment was escalating. 2 rows behind, a woman in a cream blazer leaned toward her husband. "I'm fairly certain that boy isn't supposed to be in this cabin. They're just letting these kids wander around unsupervised now." The flight attendant approached with forced professionalism. "Ma'am, we're assessing the situation. The child is actually helping calm the distressed passenger." The woman scoffed. "You mean he's doing your job better than you are?" Meanwhile, Jonathan stood frozen, completely out of his element. He wasn't accustomed to this, wasn't used to being the person without answers. "I don't understand what he's doing," he admitted quietly. "Well, it's clearly working," someone replied sharply. "So maybe don't interfere." But not everyone was convinced. Across the aisle, a man in expensive khakis spoke louder. "Are we honestly going to allow some random kid to just touch someone else's child at 30,000 feet? "That's my child," Jonathan said firmly. "Then start acting like it," the man shot back. Jonathan blinked hard. Tommy exhaled peacefully for the first time in an hour. And then it started again. Not from Tommy this time, but from them. The assumptions, the sideways glances, the muttered prejudices. "Looks like he's from the projects. They just put these kids on flights now without proper supervision. He's probably filming this for social media clout." One woman clutched her designer purse tighter. Another shifted away, pulling her Louis Vuitton bag closer. "Keep an eye on your belongings," someone whispered. Malik said nothing, but he noticed everything. Noticed how their discomfort didn't begin when Tommy was crying, but when he arrived to help. In the galley, 2 crew members whispered urgently, "I don't like this liability situation. If the family complains later..." The father hasn't said a word of protest. Exactly my point. Back at seat 2B, Jonathan finally found his voice. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. Malik didn't look up from Tommy. "Why does that matter?" "Because you just accomplished more for him in 5 minutes than a team of specialists managed in 5 years. Malik shrugged. "You weren't really seeing him. I see him every single day." "No," Malik said gently, still focused on Tommy. "You look at him. That's not the same thing." Silence. Heavy. Profound. Then from the back of the cabin, another voice cut through. "I didn't pay first-class money to watch some street kid play therapist." Heads turned. Jonathan stood to his full height, commanding the attention he was famous for. "Neither did I," he said clearly. "I paid to get my son safely to Seattle." The man grumbled and looked away, but the sting lingered in the air. Malik finally broke his focused silence. "You ever been trapped inside your own mind?" he asked Jonathan. Jonathan paused. "Every day in board meetings." "No, I mean really trapped, like your thoughts are moving through thick honey, and every sound feels like thunder in your chest." Jonathan said nothing. "He's not being difficult," Malik continued softly. "He's surviving. You're all asking him to swim when he's already drowning." Then something unexpected happened. A businesswoman from row 4 stood up gracefully. "Would you like to sit up here, young man?" she offered kindly. Malik shook his head. "No, ma'am, thank you. I'm perfectly fine right here." She nodded with genuine respect. Another passenger reached for the call button. "Can we get this young man something to drink?" The flight attendant returned, her demeanor completely changed. "Would you like a blanket for your friend?" Malik paused thoughtfully. "For Tommy, not me." She nodded and gently placed a soft blanket over Tommy's lap. The man in row 6, who had complained earlier, muttered, "This whole situation is absolutely ridiculous." Jonathan turned with quiet authority. You're welcome to request a parachute if it bothers you this much. Nervous laughter rippled through the cabin, but underneath it something fundamental was shifting. The same people who had judged Malik moments before were now realizing he wasn't confused or lucky. He was essential. But the real revelation wasn't what Malik did next. It was who he used to be. That's enough. The voice belonged to a silver-haired man in row 5D, expensive suit, leather attaché case, voice like someone who ran hedge funds and expected immediate compliance. I didn't invest over $2,000 in this seat to witness this circus performance. Security should have intervened by now. He projected his voice intentionally, wanting the front section to hear him clearly, expecting agreement, demanding applause. Instead, silence, the kind that follows pure entitlement. Jonathan slowly turned his head. Security for what exactly? A child comforting another child. The man scoffed dismissively. You're clearly unfit as a parent, sir, allowing some barefoot vagrant to play psychiatrist with your disabled son. Malik didn't move, didn't blink, didn't respond verbally, but his hand remained exactly where it was, gently near Tommy's arm. The boy's breathing remained calm and steady. Jonathan stepped forward, his business instincts engaging. You have absolutely no comprehension of what it requires to raise a child like mine. Neither do you, apparently, the man fired back coldly. That's obviously the problem here. A flight attendant rushed between them, hands raised peacefully. Gentlemen, please, we need to maintain calm in the cabin. Then escort him back to economy class, the man barked, pointing directly at Malik. He doesn't belong in this section. That broke something inside Jonathan. That boy accomplished in 5 minutes what an entire team of specialists couldn't achieve in 5 years. You think this is about seat assignments and ticket prices? This is about basic human decency. The man laughed harshly. Oh, please. Spare me the motivational speech. You're just embarrassed that you needed help from a child. Jonathan looked down at Malik, who looked back up with calm, understanding eyes. He doesn't speak loudly, Malik said suddenly, but everything inside him is screaming for help. That silenced the entire front section. The flight attendant glanced nervously toward the cockpit, then back. Sir, she said to Jonathan, if he's not traveling with your party, protocol dictates he can't remain here. I'm not leaving, Malik stated quietly. Not until Tommy feels safe. The attendant hesitated. Another passenger spoke up. You're going to remove the only person who actually helped that child? A different voice followed. Seriously, he's the one you're concerned about. Then someone started recording on their phone, and another person and another. The man in 5D slouched down in his seat. His voice wasn't quite so commanding now. This is completely ridiculous, he mumbled. Malik finally stood up slowly. He faced the man who had mocked him directly. In your world, you hear money, power, control talking. In Tommy's world, he hears colors screaming, smells punching him, sounds crushing his chest. You call that a tantrum? I call that courage. Jonathan swallowed hard, his hands trembling. I didn't realize, he whispered. I mean, I knew the diagnosis, the medical terms, but I didn't truly understand. Malik nodded gently. Most people don't. You can go back to your seat now, Malik said softly to Jonathan. Tommy's okay now. Jonathan turned to his son. Tommy met his eyes directly, something that rarely happened. And then, without warning, Tommy reached out and squeezed his father's hand tight. Gasps. Cameras capturing the moment. Tears. He's holding your hand, Malik observed quietly. That's his way of saying he trusts you again. The flight attendant stepped back respectfully. He can stay as long as necessary. And no one argued. Not this time. But when the plane landed and reporters started asking questions, Malik said 7 words that stunned the entire nation. They assumed it would end when Tommy stopped crying, but it didn't, because when that plane touched down in Seattle, news crews were already positioned and waiting. Not for celebrities, not for politicians, but for the story that had gone viral before the landing gear touched the runway. It began with a 15-second video clip, someone's shaking hands recording Malik sitting beside Tommy, saying one simple sentence, He's not broken, he's just different. The video exploded while they were still in the air. By touchdown, the boy in the worn clothes was trending across 4 countries. The flight attendant approached Jonathan as they taxied to the gate. "Mr. Wellington, CNN is requesting an exclusive interview. They're saying this could spark a national conversation about inclusion and empathy." Jonathan looked back at Malik, still calm, still present, still beside his son. He nodded once. "Let him speak first." They deplaned last. The crowd at the gate separated respectfully as they entered the terminal. Reporters were calling over each other frantically. "Sir, what exactly happened on that flight? Is it true your son has Down syndrome? Who is the boy who helped him? Was this planned? Is he related to you? Some kind of awareness campaign?" Malik didn't respond until one voice, softer and more thoughtful, cut through the chaos. "How did you know exactly what to do?" Malik turned toward her calmly. "Because I've been there." Complete silence. "Not just observed it, not just read about it in books. I've lived it." Jonathan stepped to the microphone cluster. "I'm Jonathan Wellington. Yes, I founded CloudVault. Yes, I've invested millions trying to help my son communicate effectively." He looked over his shoulder at Malik. "And this young man, this complete stranger, helped Tommy express more through quiet connection than anyone ever achieved with expensive therapies." Another reporter jumped in eagerly. "Do you know his background?" "Not yet," Jonathan admitted, "but I plan to learn everything." Someone finally addressed Malik directly. "Son, what's your full name?" Malik glanced at the cameras. "Malik Thompson. Are you studying special education? Do you work with children with disabilities? Do you have professional training?" He shook his head simply. "I had a little cousin." The atmosphere shifted completely. Even veteran reporters lowered their equipment. "He couldn't talk the same way either," Malik continued, "but he understood everything. Loud noises hurt him. Bright lights made him hide. If someone raised their voice, he'd shut down completely." A journalist in the back asked gently what happened to his cousin. Malik paused. "He passed away last year." No follow-up questions, no sensationalism, just respectful silence. Jonathan finally addressed the crowd again. "I built a technology empire teaching computers how to connect the right people for businesses." He gestured toward Malik. "But he reminded me what it actually means to connect as human beings." Then something beautiful happened. An elderly woman, tears in her eyes, pushed past security with trembling hands. "My grandson has Down syndrome too, and we've been struggling to reach him for 3 years. Could you possibly talk to him?" Malik didn't hesitate even for a second. "Of course, ma'am." He stepped forward and knelt down to the boy's eye level. "Hey there, buddy. You don't have to say anything at all. I can already hear you just fine." The boy reached out with shaking hands and touched Malik's cheek gently. His grandmother collapsed into grateful tears. He's never done that with anyone, not even family. The cameras captured every moment. Later that evening, Jonathan posted on social media, "Today I learned that true intelligence isn't programmed into apps or algorithms. It's carried by those who've been dismissed, overlooked, and underestimated. Thank you, Malik Thompson. You showed the world what compassion looks like in action." But when Jonathan offered Malik any reward he wanted, what the boy requested shocked everyone completely. It should have ended there. But by the next morning, the footage had surpassed 80 million views. Cable news programs, podcast discussions, TikTok analysis videos. Who is the boy in the hand-me-down clothes? Is empathy something you're born with or forged by pain? Then the personal stories started flooding in. Hundreds of parents posting on Down syndrome support forums, crashing servers from traffic volume, mothers crying on Facebook Live saying, "We've waited years to feel understood like this." Jonathan Wellington was invited to speak at a major tech conference that week. He declined immediately. Instead, he made a different phone call. "Find him," he told his personal assistant. "Not for publicity, not for a business opportunity. I owe him something meaningful." When they located Malik, it wasn't through professional networks. It was through a school counselor who emailed back 3 words, "That's our Malik." She included a link to a small community fundraiser. Help Malik visit his late cousin's favorite art therapy program. Every dollar counts. Total raised $127. The next day, Jonathan flew to Miami personally. No media, no entourage. He waited outside the school until the final bell rang. Students poured out, loud and energetic. Malik was among the last through the gates. Jonathan approached. "You remember me?" Malik didn't smile, but he nodded. "Of course I do." Jonathan extended a sealed envelope. "College fund. Full ride, wherever you choose to go." Malik didn't take it. "I don't want money." "Then what would you want?" Malik looked him directly in the eyes. "I want a place where kids like Tommy don't have to hide who they are just to feel safe." Jonathan paused thoughtfully. "You mean like a center?" "I mean like a home," Malik replied. "No doctors in white coats studying them, no clipboards tracking their progress, just peace and acceptance." Jonathan nodded slowly. "All right. You design it exactly how you envision it. I'll fund everything." The announcement dropped 3 days later. The Thompson Center for Gentle Souls, a fully funded sensory support sanctuary in Miami, free to any family navigating special needs. The backlash was swift from people who refused to understand. Bloggers dismissed it as emotional manipulation. Talk show hosts labeled it unqualified activism. But then more footage emerged, not just from the airplane, but from dozens of classrooms where teachers were playing Malik's words to help students finally understand themselves. Meanwhile, American Airlines launched a comprehensive internal review. The flight attendant who tried to stop Malik was transferred to ground services. The man in seat 5D was identified publicly, called out by name, and lost his consulting contract the following week. He tweeted a public apology. "I reacted poorly and have since educated myself." Nobody retweeted it. Malik was invited to the White House. He respectfully declined, but sent a handwritten letter with no hashtags or social media tags. If we want to reach the ones who communicate differently, we have to stop talking over them and start sitting beside them like they matter, because they absolutely do. Jonathan read that letter at the tech conference anyway, then set down the microphone and said, "I used to build products for millions of users. Now I build relationships one child at a time." He walked off stage to thunderous applause. But what happened next wasn't about Jonathan or even Tommy. It was about what Malik planted and who carried it forward. The Thompson Center opened 8 months later. No grand opening ceremony, no media fanfare, just a simple wooden sign by the door. "You don't have to explain yourself here." Inside, beanbags instead of hard chairs, soft lighting, sound-dampening walls painted in calming colors, no clipboards, no assessments, just space to exist. The children came cautiously at first, then in growing numbers. One boy arrived wearing noise-canceling headphones and kept them on for 3 weeks. Another spoke her first complete sentence within those walls. A girl with Down syndrome painted her emotions across an entire wall, and for once, nobody told her to stop. At the center of it all sat Malik, not behind an official desk, not in an administrative role, just present on the floor with a group of non-speaking kids, watching them create art with sidewalk chalk. A volunteer approached him one quiet afternoon. "You ever consider going into special education professionally?" Malik smiled. "Only if I don't have to talk much." They both laughed warmly. Jonathan visited monthly, quietly, without cameras or press releases. He brought Tommy. The boy who used to panic on airplanes now helped other children choose paint colors for the sensory rooms. One afternoon, Tommy walked up to Malik, tapped his shoulder gently, and asked clearly, "Do you want to draw with me?" Malik's eyes widened. "You just asked me a complete question." Tommy grinned proudly. "Yeah, that's something new I learned. Pretty cool, right?" They bumped fists. Word of the center spread organically. Families traveled from neighboring states. A podcast episode featuring Malik went viral again, this time with educators sharing how they'd transformed their teaching methods after hearing him speak. A prestigious university offered him an honorary doctorate degree. He turned it down immediately. "My cousin never had that opportunity," he explained simply. "It feels wrong to accept something he never got a chance at." Local news caught him outside the center one evening. A reporter asked, Do you see yourself as a leader in this movement now? Malik considered the question carefully. I don't lead anyone. Then what would you call what you do? I sit beside people who've been ignored for too long. That sounds like leadership to me. He shrugged. Then maybe the world needs quieter leaders. At a school assembly across town the following week, a young girl stood up and read a poem aloud. They said I was slow. He said I was thoughtful. They told me to hurry up. He told me to take my time. I cried. He stayed. She never mentioned Malik's name. She didn't need to. Sitting in the back of that gymnasium were Jonathan and Tommy. Tommy had a notebook in his lap. He wrote one sentence carefully, then passed it to his father. Jonathan read it, then covered his mouth with his hand. What does it say? The teacher asked curiously. Jonathan looked up with tears in his eyes. He wrote, I want to help someone tomorrow too. This became the lasting impact, not a headline, not a donation check, not even a building, but a ripple effect. One boy helped another breathe, and it echoed into classrooms, into families, into systems that had forgotten how to truly listen. But Malik had one final message for anyone who still didn't understand. They asked him one more time at a youth leadership summit in Washington, D.C., months after the Thompson Center had already opened its 4th location across 3 states. Malik, what would you say to people who still don't understand kids like Tommy? He took the microphone, didn't rush his words, didn't use prepared remarks. I'd ask them just one simple question. He scanned the packed auditorium. When was the last time you truly listened to someone who doesn't communicate exactly like you? Profound silence. Not corrected them, not tried to fix them, just listened with your whole heart. The moderator nodded. That's incredibly powerful. Malik nodded back. That's survival for them. Later, backstage, a middle-aged man from the audience approached him hesitantly. He was holding a worn baseball cap and a folded piece of paper. I was the passenger in seat 5D on that flight. Malik looked up calmly. The man exhaled shakily. I judged you unfairly, spoke without thinking, then watched the entire world thank you while I felt ashamed. Malik didn't lecture him, didn't make him feel worse, just asked, what changed for you? The man swallowed hard. My nephew was diagnosed with Down syndrome 2 months ago, and I remembered your exact words. How's he doing now? Better, because I stopped trying to fix him and started learning to understand him. Malik nodded approvingly. That's all anyone really needs. Now it's your turn. If you've ever spoken over someone because they communicated differently than you expected, if you've ever witnessed a public meltdown and assumed it was poor parenting, if you've ever walked past someone in distress and thought, that's not my responsibility, then this story is meant for you, because empathy isn't about being perfect, it's about pausing long enough to care. You don't need professional training to help someone feel safe. You don't need a title or position to defend a child in crisis. You don't need wealth or power to change the entire atmosphere. You just need to care enough to stay present. What's your honest reaction to this story? Share in the comments below. I read every single response personally, and if you've ever been the one who wasn't truly seen, or the one who finally learned to see clearly, share this story with others and subscribe now. Thank you for listening.